you may or may not be surprised to hear that big oil is striking back at those they believe are making it harder for them to do great harm to the planet. Some serious free speech issues that are stemming out of the Standing Rock struggle that many people may remember around the Dakota Access Pipeline in North Dakota. Energy Transfer, the big company behind that, now suing Greenpeace USA and Greenpeace International, making a range of claims about what they claim was happening vis-a-vis the Standing Rock struggle. But I think with some broader implications for the overall movement, certainly for climate justice, but I think, many other important issues where people are using their First Amendment rights to speak out. So to break this all down for it and to get into all the implications, we are very, very honored to be joined here on the show by Charlie Cray, who is a senior strategist with Greenpeace USA. Charlie, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having us on. Thank you.
Well, it's an honor to have you here. Wish it was under better circumstances, but certainly an important story we want people to know about. I saw it in AP. I don't know how many people have even seen the story. So maybe to start, Charlie, what is Energy Transfer alleging Greenpeace did? What is the nature of this lawsuit?
So Energy Transfer is suing Greenpeace, as you mentioned, Greenpeace US and Greenpeace International for $300 million. And essentially it boils down to a conspiracy narrative that they are alleging that Greenpeace led the Standing Rock protest, orchestrated it, and that the statements Greenpeace made ruined their reputation and were used to interfere with their business by, for instance, influencing banks to pull out of the project.
Well, I'm curious if you can tell us about the use of these SLAPP lawsuits, the strategic lawsuits against public participations to silence dissent by these corporations. It's a growing trend. It's one way to explain what Energy Transfer is doing to you. So why does this matter? Why should people care?
Right. So these lawsuits are basically designed to intimidate organizations and individuals. And I should add journalists, human rights activists, and others. The oil and gas industry is one of the biggest perpetrators, one of the biggest bullies in using this. But we've also seen other sort of billionaire bullies use it. Elon Musk, for instance, filed a SLAPP suit against Media Matters. Donald Trump has used SLAPP suits. It's part of a big toolbox to attempt to dismantle activism and, frankly, dismantle democracy through the courts and other means. So SLAPPs are often not just filed against organizations. It's cost us millions of dollars to defend ourselves, but they go after individuals. They go after smaller organizations. And it's really quite intimidating, and it can silence people, force them to reach settlements that they otherwise wouldn't. But overall, it's essentially an attempt to muzzle and divide movements.
I'm glad you raised the issue of dividing movements too, because it seems like one other issue at stake here, and you sort of already alluded to this, is the suggestion that Greenpeace was sort of behind the scenes puppet mastering what was happening at Standing Rock, which of course, for those of us who remember, certainly is not the right narrative. But I was hoping you could talk about that a little bit as well, because I think that's an important factor of how they're trying to also rewrite the history of what took place at Standing Rock and what it meant for indigenous communities.
That's right. So you're right. This is a racist rewrite of the history of Standing Rock. And one of the claims in the case is that Greenpeace can be held liable for the actions of everyone who was at Standing Rock. Greenpeace had 6 individuals over the course of the protests that involved 100,000 estimated people. And as you probably recall, and many of your audience will recall, this started at the grassroots level and the tribal level at Standing Rock, the Standing Rock Sioux tribe. And it was a response to a company that basically would not listen to their views and proceeded to lay the pipeline. And they made a call out to their allies and other tribes. And over 300 tribes had representatives at Standing Rock. And our folks didn't even show up there until long after the camps had grown to become quite large. The resistance had become quite large. And part of the allegations here that I think aren't just an existential threat to Greenpeace, but to the movement, is that they are trying to lay not just pipe, but legal claims. They're trying to lay precedent that Greenpeace can be held, again, accountable legally for the actions of others. And there were people there, for instance, who damaged the company's equipment and so forth. What they're trying to suggest is that Greenpeace can be held accountable because Greenpeace was invited to come in and do de-escalation training, nonviolent civil disobedience training, and so forth. So they're concocting a conspiracy without any evidence against Greenpeace.
It's really insane when you think about it. I mean, a $300 million lawsuit. So this is a way to also immediately threaten an organization like Greenpeace, or literally any organization that steps in to be involved in any way, no matter how legal, with protest activity against these massive oil giants, or really any corporation in the country. But, beyond that immediate threat to Greenpeace, you mentioned setting a precedent. So I want you to elaborate a bit on that. What are the broader legal and political implications of this case? Because when you talk about setting a precedent, this would essentially allow corporations to more aggressively weaponize the courts against activists, against journalists, against advocacy organizations like Greenpeace, not just by trying to bankrupt them by suing them, but beyond that. So yeah, could you elaborate a bit on that precedent you're talking about?
Right. So, Greenpeace is an organization. We are an easy target when you're talking about a mass mobilization, a mass movement. And what they're trying to do is divide the movement by picking off identifiable organizations and holding them liable. They claim that Greenpeace should be held liable for all of the extra security costs, all of the delayed construction costs, and so forth. The implications of this are similar in a civil society case, in the sense of a corporation being able to weaponize the law against activists, similar to what the government tried to do in the McKesson case down in Louisiana, where one individual who might obtain a permit and organize a protest could allegedly be held liable for the actions of others. That was a famous case that they've tried to mount and were unsuccessful.
No, I think that's an important point, and it almost raises another issue. I'm glad you brought up the McKesson case, because it makes me think about movement in the context of this and what we're talking about. And it seems that one element of this also maybe this is not the right word, but somewhat heartening, because if it wasn't making any difference what people were doing, it seems they would not be going to great lengths. So this also seems to speak a little bit to the successes of the climate justice movement.
Absolutely. I mean, and the success of the indigenous rights movement. Standing Rock was the largest indigenous protest in modern memory. And we were invited in as allies, and we didn't lead that protest, as we mentioned. But yeah, this is, we all know where the science is on climate change, and we need to stop the expansion of the fossil fuel industry. And everywhere there is frontline, fence line resistance, the activists are putting their bodies on the line or otherwise trying to stop these companies. And it's not just SLAPP suits. We're seeing anti-protest laws, what they call critical infrastructure bills, that criminalize people for trespass. There's already laws against things like trespass, but they're trying to up the stakes, treat activists as, in some case, even treat them much like they were terrorists. And I think this is a worrisome trend, especially in the era of Trump. We're getting the, big billionaire bullies and weaponizing all areas of the law here. So it's a real disconcerting trend. But here we have a corporation run by a billionaire taking Greenpeace to court and alleging, basically has said that they want us to pay for what happened at Standing Rock.
Can you talk a bit about what it is that Greenpeace is doing to fight back against this? I mean, you're obviously going to court. Proceedings are happening now.
Sure.
So Greenpeace isn't taking this lying down. And I think it's really important for people to understand that there are things that perhaps they can do to try to push back against this sort of thing. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for asking, Ronnie. We have a website, greenpeaceontrial.org, where we have calls to action. People can sign petition. There's an organizational letter that we have nearly 500 organizations that have signed an open letter to the company to essentially say we stand with Greenpeace. We have a series of webinars tonight. In fact, for your listeners listening live, we have one where we have guests from Standing Rock explaining the history of DAPL, the true history of DAPL, and we'll be giving a legal update as part of that. And that's a weekly briefing series that'll happen through the course of this trial. The trial lasts 5 weeks. And I should say, no matter what the outcome of this trial, we're going to survive. You can't sue a movement. That's what these people don't understand about this SLAPP case. We will be around in whatever form or fashion. We will be able to appeal this lawsuit, if necessary, to the state Supreme Court. So we're not going to be intimidated. That's part of the whole intention. And we're inviting people to stand with us in that regard. We're winning in the court of public opinion. If people look at the coverage in the New York Times, the Guardian, the Washington Post, elsewhere, the story is being told largely the way it is, that this is an attack on free speech, the First Amendment right to speak and right to assemble, as people do in big protests. And we will not be intimidated by this case. And we appreciate all the support we've gotten.
Mm-hmm. Well, we really appreciate you coming on. And listen, I think movements have always faced this and always been able to stand up. I think that's a great point. You can't sue a movement. Charlie Cray, senior strategist with Greenpeace USA. Really, really appreciate you joining us here on the Freedom Side.
Thank you for having us.